Nightfall is a 2 to 4 player game from AEG that plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. The setting is a world torn by an event called Nightfall that has creatures such as vampires, werewolves, and ghouls fighting with and against each other. It's a dark place and resources are in short supply, so to use the old cliche, it's either kill or be killed. In Nightfall, you're the leader of a small faction of minions. You use those minions to attack your opponents and to absorb any attacks your opponents may throw in your direction. Now, at its core, Nightfall is a deck building game in the tradition of games like Dominion and Thunderstone. But it feels nothing like those games, other than maybe when you add cards to your deck in the buy phase, which is called the influence phase here, because you're not just buying cards to add to your deck, you're influencing minions to join your faction. So I'm going to take you through your first turn of Nightfall. So you start by having a draft to decide which cards are going to be used, and just in the commons, and also what's going to be in your personal archives. Your personal archives are 2 stacks of cards that only you can buy. And then there's going to be 8 stacks that everyone else can buy. Those are the commons. So you're always going to have 8 common or community stacks and 2 personal archives. And each player will have their own two stacks, personal archives. Then you set up a wound deck. So you count out 10 times the number of players you have. So if you have 3 players, you're going to be using 30 wounds. You flip the remaining wounds and stack the ones you counted on top. So you'll know when you deal out all the wounds that are showing and not flipped, the game's going to be over. So you then take 2 of every 0 cost minion, and it's going to total up to 12 cards. And every player begins with the same 12 cards, so nobody's going to start with an advantage. Then everyone draws 5 cards out of those 12. Normally, you would have to send your minions to attack in the first phase or combat phase of your turn. But when you start, you're not going to have any minions. So the first player is probably going to go directly to the chain phase, where player 1 will lay out any colored card they like. And the colors are represented by the big moon on the top left of a card. And they can link any cards if they'd like to. So, and the link colors are the 1 or 2 smaller moons under the big one. So if you have a red card and with a yellow moon underneath it, you can link like a yellow moon card. And there's also a part of the card called a kicker. The kicker effect only takes place if the color of the moon in the kicker section of the card matches the color of the moon of the card it was linked to. Sounds kind of confusing, but it'll make sense after a few plays. You can link as many cards as you're able to. And sometimes players are just going to empty their entire hands on a good run. And once you finish your link, the next player can continue your link, providing they have the correct color cards. And it continues clockwise until all players have either continued your link or passed on their turn. After that, you begin the resolve portion of the chain phase, where you look at the card's chain effects, or effects that take place after you link this card to a chain. Starting with the last player who linked a card in the chain, you resolve the chain effects in the opposite order in which they were played. So an easy way to think about it is last one in, first one out. And you'll resolve it probably like counterclockwise until it gets back to the player who began the chain in the first place. So any action cards you played during the link phase get discarded after you perform their link effect. and the minions are put out in front of you after they're resolved. Those are the minions. That's what you use to attack in the combat phase, on your next combat phase. And they're also going to defend you against your opponents on their combat phase. So just to be clear, in order to attack with your minions, they have to be in play before your turn starts. In addition, minions also have to be in play before an opponent's combat phase in order to defend you. Attacking is mandatory if you have minions with a strength value listed on them, which is the red number on the top right side of the card. This number just tells you how many hit points it'll deal to the opponent. So after you send your minions to attack in your combat phase, you must discard them. The red notches on the side of the minion cards tell you how many hits your minions can absorb for you. They're turned around to show how many more hits they can absorb. Once they absorb their limit, they're placed in your discard pile. And any extra hits that sneak through are dealt directly to you in the form of wound cards. And wound cards are bad news because that's how you calculate who wins or loses the game. So you're definitely going to want to have some minions in play, absorbing those hits for you. So after you resolve the chain and put your minions in play, you go to the claim phase, where instead of money, like I said earlier, you use what's called influence. You always have 2 influence at the start of your claim phase, but if you discard cards from your hand, and it's possible even some chain effects can increase your influence. So it can help you buy some of the more powerful cards. So there's no buy limit either, so you can claim as many cards as you have influence. You could even claim multiples of the same card if you'd like. So finally you get to your cleanup phase, where you draw until you have at least 5 cards in your hand. And that's where, if you have any wound cards in your hand, if you got them on someone else's turn or cleanup, you can discard them and draw 2 additional cards for each wound card. And if it's your turn and you draw them, you get to do that as well. But you could only discard wounds in your hand once per turn. So if you draw any wound cards after that, they're going to have to stay in your hand until your next turn. There's no hand limit, so there can be times when you have most of your deck in your hands. And after that, you pass to the next player, and they go through their 4 phases, and you continue until the last wound cards are dealt. Then you do a wound count and see who has the least wound cards, and that player's a winner. Once you memorize the rules, a game can end in about 20 minutes or possibly even less, and turns move pretty quick. Much faster, I think, than some other deck building games I've played. Nightfall is highly interactive, and it really rewards aggressive play. So you're going to be thrilled when you finally get a great draw and a linker call that you need to lay out that crazy combo or chain you've been dying to start. And you feel like you've been punched in the gut when your opponent plays a card that wipes out all the minions that you work so hard to put out there. Don't let that put you off the game. It's incredibly fun, and the balance of power shifts so often that you're usually only a good chain away from a great attack. Some of the mechanics in Nightfall actually address some of my biggest issues with deck builders. Like, the first one is runaway leaders. So in Nightfall, when you're in the lead, you're always a big target, and you're going to be pretty much get assaulted or pummeled by everyone until you take some wounds and everyone's satisfied that you're, they kind of evened it out. So the second issue I have with deck builders is useless draws. There's nothing worse than, drawing a bunch of cards that you just can't do anything with. But here, I think the worst cards are the wound cards. And they actually help you out during the game. I mean, of course, you don't want them, but they let you draw more cards, and everything else is your minions and actions, and you want to draw those. I think my third biggest issue with deck builders is the boring downtime. You see, my favorite part of deck builders is the card combos. When it's my turn, waiting while someone else takes what seems like forever playing their card combos, causing endless turns, and where they draw like a dozen cards gets really annoying to the other players. And when it's finally your turn, everyone just sits there glaring at you while you do the same thing. But in Nightfall, you usually get the opportunity to combo on every turn. So you're not just sitting there waiting for them to finish. You're actually linking cards and doing damage yourself. Also in most games I've played, winners are usually decided by one or two big attacks. So everyone pretty much stays involved to the very end. So to sum it up, I really like Nightfall. I think it's a great game. It's fast, it's highly interactive, and I can't wait to see what the expansions add to the game. This video brought to you by The Card Gamer. Visit thecardgamer.com for questions, review requests, or to get info to send preview copies of any games you would like The Card Gamer to review. Thank you.